Hello and welcome everyone. This is going to be a brief demo application process just to show you an HR application process using FileBound. I'm here with Burke One and we're just talking about that digital transformation solution and services. So first off, we're going to talk about the forms portal, and there would be an HTML form that would be available, whether it be on the portal or located on your own website, but it's something that would be able to be filled out, and we are using this application as an example, but definitely thinking of any other forms that would be available. So in this case, I'm just going to fill out some information here. Richard Vassar is my applicant. And again, I won't fill out all of these, but we'll just put in a couple of them just to give you an idea of how this form and the information on it can be passed through, and then we're going to start to build an application. We'll attach a resume, and we'll sign the document. So again, this form was created inside of FileBound on the Forms Designer, but it can be created outside of FileBound as an HTML form. So we're going to go ahead and submit this. Now, behind the scenes, what's going to happen is that form and the data and the information is going to be sent to FileBound, and we're really going to start to build this applicant's file, which could potentially become an HR employee. So as that form was submitted into FileBound, all that data was sent, it actually kicks off a workflow. So I'll log out and I'll come in as my HR manager, Judy. And within that workflow, so there's a couple things that could happen. One of the constants with FileBound is that you're going to go to, for lack of better terms, a home page or an assignments page, and that's where all of your workflow tasks are sent to. Now, in some cases, you may not always be living in FileBound, and you want to enable an email that's sent. So an email can be sent to a person if something has been assigned to them, but that is an option. So maybe some people don't want to have their emails inundated with workflow emails, so that can be turned on or off based on how you set up that particular workflow. In this case, I'm just going to go out to the to my assignments page, and I'm going to see that I have a few different items that I am tasked with doing. And on this one, we're going to take a look at the possible employee of Richard Vassar, and we're going to take a look at the applicant. So here's that form that we filled out, and what you'll notice is, again, we're starting to build that potential HR file. And up at the top, we have a couple dividers, or what we call them, but pretty much document types: assessment test completed in I-9 that have a little red asterisk. And what that's telling me is those are required documents at some point within this potential applicant's file that we're going to need to have a document associated to them in some way, shape, or form. And so again, we have that resume that was attached. So here's a look at the resume. And then also another form has been created, the assessment test. So again, we're building that file, and everything, all those documents are coming in behind the scenes in this case. So as we look at the application for employment, Mary has two potential tasks: either application interview or applicant hold. And in this scenario, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and select applicant interview to move it on to the next step. So I'm just going to put please review. And these notes can be turned on or off based on how you create and configure your workflow also. As I hit save and continue, you'll notice that it said workflow operation complete, and it definitely keeps me within that viewer. So if my work was done, I would no longer have any assignments or anything up over here. But what we'll see is that for some reason this resubmit button came up. And I do see my workflow comment there, please review. So I have to think to myself as the person here, as Judy, is that, oh, what did I miss? Maybe I did something wrong. Well, in this case, I did. I forgot to send out that assessment test, which is a required document that we needed to have before it's moved on in the next workflow. So the workflow is checking and saying, this is missing a document. Don't go to the next step because we need to have that there and present before it can go to the next step in the workflow. So I now remember that, oh, okay, I need to send this assessment test out. And there's a couple different ways that I can do that. I can maybe call Richard and we could fill out this particular document. Or I can do this via email. So as we look at this, I can see that if I'm going to send out an email, it attaches that document and I can send that out to Richard. Well, let's just say I did send that out, and now that particular document is going to get filled out by Richard. So I won't fill out all these items here, but what I will do is just maybe say, you know, what job responsibilities am I good at? I'll say multitasking, and then just come down here and do C++. So I filled out that information and I'll submit that back. So I get the successful item here. If I go to the web viewer and I come back in at a later time, at a later date, we'll now see that there is no longer the assessment test completed with the red asterisk. And here is that document with that information filled out. So it came back in and replaced it. Now, what we can also do is remove the blank form too at some point in time. I just didn't do that. That can be done in a you know, by myself if I have the options to do that, or it can be done in an automated fashion. So now as we go back to my workflow piece, we can also just take a quick look of where we're at in the workflow. So I can pop open a map and I can see that, oh, it's gone down a couple steps. It's sitting at me right now. This is where it needs to go at the resubmit. So maybe I want to see, it's got a couple other steps that have to happen within the system before it gets completed. So just a different of a visual, and I'll show you that workflow map here in a little bit to see how it processes down. But now we're going to go ahead and say resubmit. And this time, we'll say please interview. And you'll notice that workflow operates complete, and I no longer have any workflow tasks associated to me, Judy Myers. So we're going to go ahead and close that, log in and log out. And during this process, I'm going to come in as a couple different users. So we're going to come in as Blaine Johnson. We're going to sign in. And depending on the user, you have different places that you can start at when you're coming into FileBound. So you can have a workspace that you're built out and you have different items already there. You can start out at an assignments page, which is that visual assignments. You can start at a search screen, different things there. So depending upon each user will have their own preferences and be able to do different things, as you can see there. So I'm going to say that we're going to go look at Richard's file, because as Blaine Johnson is a sales manager, it picked up that he was the person tied to sales, so it automatically chose him out of the list within the configured workflow to go to Blaine. So maybe something we want to talk about is adding a note to Richard's file. And this note could be something as simple as, lacks experience, but good culture fit. And I save that. Now, imagine this note as being a sticky note that somebody would place on an application. So just a yellow sticky note. So it could be removed at any time and thrown away by anybody who had access to that particular file if you were talking about a paper document or that note. But let's say you want to make that more of a permanent item that is not that yellow sticky note that can be taken away. So if I come to my file activity, I have an area here that will show all the activity for this particular file, whether there's been items changed to it, index values changed, or view items if you've done different things within that. So you have those capabilities based on the rights. So in this case, I'm going to add this comment here. And now this is more of a hardened note. It can't be edited, it can't be changed, it can't be taken away. So it's within the file journal that we have available. So you can kind of see how those different items are there. So just the difference between the note and a journal is, imagine that note being a sticky note, it can come off. You can also search on these notes though. So if you do make a common note when you're searching for files, not only can you search on index values, but you could also search on different notes. Okay. So from here, I'm going to say that we actually went through the interview, and we have some different items here. So we're going to go ahead and do the pre-hire packet, and maybe my workflow note is, interview. I can type, went well. Please hire. Okay. I'm gonna log out again and come in as Mary Lee. So you'll notice too that Mary's workspace looks a little bit different than Blaine's and Judy's. But as we come into the workflow assignments page, I can see that I do have a couple tasks that I need to do for other people, but we're going to focus still on the background check that the process and the step is at for Richard. Now, based on how I do and perform my workflow tasks, I don't always have to go into the viewer to do this. I can come in here and I can actually do those same boxes that are going to be on the right-hand side. If I wanted to hire, I could do that from here also. But for this case, we're going to go in and we're going to view, open up that viewer. And we're also going to see that how that file is beginning to grow, right? So we still have that I-9 that's missing, but we have the resume. Now we have a background check, the assessment test that was there, and a drug test. So as we look at the drug test, this is the drug test consent and release form. So maybe we need to get this signed before we can run through and have that performed. And here's where we go and talk about a little bit of an integration with DocuSign. So within this particular document, we're going to take this and send it for signature. I'm going to add the signer of Richard Vassar and send the email out. Let's see here. And we're going to say send for signature. Or, sorry, sent form signature. Please sign. And again, you could have this templated out or definitely have some more comments in there. But what's this going to do is it's going to take that particular document and it's going to take me into my DocuSign and allow me to show where this document needs to be signed, and then give it the date. So I'm going to send that on. So now that's going to go out to Richard, and we're going to get an email here in just a second, and we're going to be able to take a look at that particular document as it comes into. I'll drag this over here so you can see it. But so I actually had it emailed to me just for brevity's sake. So here's the document that they want Richard to sign. So as I pull that up, it's going to ask me to continue, and I'm going to go ahead and just sign it. So there's my signature. There's the date. We're going to finish it. And now what happens is that particular document was signed via DocuSign. And a couple things happened within the workflow. So you're also going to get, whoever is signing that is going to get another email that's going to come through with that signed document. So they have the executed document as well. Move that back over. And if I come back into that background check, we'll come into the drug test. And how I have it set up is to take a look at where we're at and import that. Now, you could automatically have that import and replace that unsigned version with the signed version, but I'm going to do this manually here. And now we're going to see this drug test as the signed one with the document there. Some of the other pieces that are tied to that is it has a little bit more of an audit trail to show you where this document has been. You know, when was it created? When was it sent out? It was opened by Richard. It was signed, sent back. So it gives you an even further audit trail within that system. So just some integration pieces that we also have with FileBound. So we'll go back to application here. And now that we've got that taken care of, we can actually say hire. Okay, and maybe it's please create hiring packet. And again, these comments can also be turned on or off based on what you want to have done. Okay. So Mary Lee's work on that side of it is done. Now we're actually going to be talking about the hiring packet and what comes in with it. So one of the pieces that Mary needed to do for this is the payroll checklist. So again, as I open this up, you now see how this is really growing. Onboarding checklist. We have many other things. And this one, it's the employee payroll checklist that Mary is responsible for. Now again, depending upon your user rights, all of these documents that are over here on the left, you may or may not even know that they're there because you may have certain security rights that are turned on where you can only see specific particular items within that person's file. So in this case, I'm just going to say direct deposit and set up payroll. Please complete. We're going to save that. So that data has been saved, and we're going to go ahead and complete. And I won't put a note there on that one. So Mary's work is done. I'm going to log out one more time here and come in as Blaine again. And so on this particular process, we can see that Richard has a couple things. So we have a manager review and IT requirements for the employee. So on this one, Blaine has 2 jobs or 2 tasks to do. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the manager review one first. And in this one, we're going to say benefits package, training process, no note needed. And then we're going to say complete. Completed. Now, since I was in Richard's file already, and I had another document that was routed to me, I have it turned on to say, take me to the next document that I have a task associated to. So it brought me down to the IT setup checklist, and I have the IT department review also. So again, same process. If I want to click any notes or do any saves or do anything to this, I can do this. I can add a note, and we're just making a change to that particular document. And then we're going to move it on down the line. So as you see, when we go through the workflow and the processes, based on how you configure that, it's going to be different people, and you can have different groups of people to go through different items within a workflow. So whether it be a singular step or multiple people performing steps at the same time, how you configure that workflow is how that will work. So we have that. Now, one of the final items that we have for this particular piece is dealing with kind of some compliance. So if I go back to my workspace, we have a couple different ways of setting up some compliance things. In this one, I have what we call a missing I-9 widget. So it's looking for any files that's missing that I-9, because in HR, I-9 is kind of an important document to have. Well, from here, I can see that I'm still missing several of those, and one of those happens to be Richard's. And depending upon when I get that document, there are several different ways of being able to add documents to files. Again, you have to have the rights to do that. But let's just say I click on that. It takes me directly into this particular file. There's Richard, and it takes me to the I-9, which is missing. So, I could either right click and we can add a document. So I could upload the document. If I had a scanner and I had that with me, I could scan it. So there's a myriad of ways to do a distributive capture. In this scenario here, I'm going to show you a little bit of the integration that we have outside of FileBound, if you will, in working with Outlook. And so let's say I don't have my FileBound open any longer, but I have an email, and you can have this, what we call FileBound Connect, kind of running, sitting behind the scenes. And as I'm looking at my emails, I happen to get an email in, and I see that this email is the I-9 for Richard Vassar, and I want to be able to save that into FileBound. So again, as I come in, this is another way or a shortcut into FileBound. So I can pop over my Connect, and I can say, let's do a search for Richard, and find. So it found that I have two files, and I know Richard is the one that I want to bring in. So I double click, and what it does is it does that search, and it finds all the documents that are associated with Richard right now. So I can go in and view any of those documents from there. But what I want to do, or what I want to focus on, is bringing in this I-9, so we have it there. In this case, I'm just going to say, oh, let's just drag and drop this over. So it brings it in, and it says, how do I want to store this? Do I just want to store the email? Do I want to store the email and its attachments, or just the attachment alone? In this scenario, I'm going to bring in both. I'm going to say, here's my email, or the text part of the email, and this is my document as the attachment. If I needed to, I could also kick off a workflow for that particular document to have it go down, maybe an I-9 workflow, or however you wanted that configured. But in this case, no workflow starting. I'm just going to go ahead and save. So we've taken that now, and it now has two documents there. So I can go in and view that from here, and it's going to pop open my workflow, or excuse me, pop open my my particular items here. We're going to go in and see for Richard that we have a couple different items here. So as we're looking at HR records. So we have Richard. We now have the I-9 in there. So we'll be able to see that there is an I-9 document in there. And then the other thing, if we come back and we go to that workspace, we can also see that Richard is no longer on that particular widget, and that shortcut is no longer needed for Richard. So that kind of brings that whole compliance piece in. And there's definitely different ways to set that up or other items to do that. But hopefully that gives you a good general overview of the forms piece that happened with FileBound. All that data comes in and starts creating additional documents or additional items to a file, and we now have a complete employee file. Now, let's say Richard leaves the company. You could take everything and move that to a terminated project, and then have all that document stored, because depending upon the amount of time that's necessary to maintain those records, you may have to have those. But hopefully that gives you a good 30,000-foot overview of FileBound, the forms, workflow capabilities, and some of the different items that we have there. So thank you very much for your time today, and have a good day.